On to today's hot topic, and it's been reported that tougher COVID restrictions are on the way. That's despite a new lockdown being announced just a week ago. It seems so much longer than that.
Doesn't it?
It really does. Well, it's been speculated that new measures could include a curfew, ending support bubbles and closing nurseries, which have, until now, as we know, remained open while schools are shut, unlike in that first lockdown. So is it time for them to close? Nadia, what do you reckon?
Well, it's funny because I've got a couple of friends that work in nurseries and, you know, the government has done the good job, the right job of making us all feel very, very frightened about this so that we can protect ourselves. And they're genuinely frightened. You know, one friend of mine, you know, she has 30 kids and she says that's basically 30 different families and whoever those families mix with that I could be exposed to. So she doesn't want to be at home. She loves being in the nursery and she gets really bored at home, but she's genuinely frightened for her own health and her family. Yeah,
well, we did a poll, actually, online, and I believe it's about 75% of you believe that playgrounds should be shut and also that nurseries should be shut too. I have nursery-age children, and I'm just so thankful to the nursery staff because it's been an absolute lifeline. Because I think early years can be quite difficult in order to be able to work from home. Those early years are hard. I know it's hard for everybody.
Does it strike fear in your heart, the thought of it closing? How are you going to manage getting to work? And
there's an element of that, but also there's so much development that happens at that age, doesn't it? You know, learning their first words, learning to crawl, learning to walk, all those things which I think are helped by being around other children. And I know, but with you, Stacey, Zach was on his own, and you didn't do all the other stuff, did you?
We were talking earlier, weren't we, about development stages, and I think there's far too much pressure and there's a very rigid sort of guideline that your children are supposed to reach, points that they're supposed to hit at certain times, and I just don't think it's real. I think all children develop at different ages. When I had Zach, there was no other children in our family because I was very young. I didn't have any friends with babies. He didn't go to nursery because it was very expensive at the time, so he didn't go to school until he was school age. All he knew were adults. And he actually was probably the most forward of all three of my children because he spoke like an adult. He learned how to interact really quickly. He was sociable, confident, and so I think no matter how your children grow up, don't put too much pressure on yourself because their environment will impact them in positive and not so positive ways all the time. So it's just one of those sort of not being too hard on yourself and just knowing that good does still come out of these.
Absolutely. And it makes me feel a little bit better about hearing that from you, Stacey. What about you, Frankie? How's the whole homeschooling situation been getting on?
You know, for us, it's been slightly easier this time. I think the schools have had time, unfortunately, to figure out how they're going to do it and how they can improve it each time. But I think it's really hard. I think, you know, we all tell ourselves not to put too much pressure on ourselves, but we are worried about our children's education and we are worried about their mental health as well. And I know I've got friends that are having to do a full-time job at home whilst trying to teach 1, 2, 3 children at the same time, and it's practically impossible. So, you know, Wayne and I are kind of lucky. We're not working 9 to 5. We don't have jobs where we have to sit at our computers, but everyone's situation is different, and I understand that, you know, we are in the middle of a pandemic and we have to find a way to bring down those numbers, but we also have to think about the future and we do have to think about people, and I think it's a really impossible decision to make, to be honest.
That's one of the most frustrating things about this conversation is because sometimes I don't think that we take into account those people that don't have any other options other than nursery, don't have any other options other than schools. And sometimes, rather than us doing that blanket thing, well, or our government by going, right, everything's shut, I do wish they'd try and support the nurseries and give them PPI, give them the confidence to stay open for those who really need it, for those who don't have.
Well, I know that there's some you know, the most vulnerable children have been able to go to school this time round because especially those that don't have things like laptops and Wi-Fi that they can use at home. I mean, the Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, who has been talking all over the place today to try and encourage people to stick to lockdown, and says the reason that nursery schools are open is to allow people who need to go to work or need to do a particular activities to do so. And we all do know that children are at very, very low risk of this virus relative to other ages. So it's not zero risks, but it's also a very low risk. But the reality is, Nadia, is that people are very nervous about this, aren't they?
They are really nervous, and it's really... And I you know, my children have been homeschooled for the last 6 years. I'm going to tell you, folks, they're all right. Because I really feel for people at the moment, both for parents and for children, because we're hearing all the time with pundits, on the news, all sorts of people saying, you know, our children's lives are being ruined by this loss of education. I really, really don't believe that. There's different ways. Like you were talking earlier, Stacey, about the different milestones. I bumped into a friend of mine the other day, and she was like, every time I speak to a mum, they say, I'm rubbish, I'm doing really badly. So, well, you're not, because you're not a teacher. You're doing just fine. And I think that we have to take the heat out of it. If your child hasn't learnt the words that are on a list somewhere that says that those are the words you must know at this age, who knows? They might learn a different set of words. Yeah. And I really do think children will recover. And I think we've got to be really mindful how often we're saying that their education and their lives are going to be ruined by this gap. Look at countries across the world where children have had to go through wars. They will recover. We're just going to be a little skewed. The curriculum might not be perfect, but they're going to learn other things, and in time, everyone will catch up.
Yeah, and as we know, it's not everybody finds it easy. I mean, it's hard all round for everyone, really.
Don't knock yourselves, mums and dads. You're trying your best.
We're all doing our best. That is the message we definitely want to get across today. OK,